So this week we're going to take a look at how to turn your handwriting into a font. The process overall is really not that difficult. I'm going to kind of like skip around a little bit just so I can show you like some of the things I'm actually doing. When Autumn Springs had sent me her handwriting, like originally I had said no ballpoint pens, and mainly I was concerned with the color of the pen interfering with like lined blue paper, things like that. She wrote the letters dark enough that it didn't interfere much. I was able to just clean it up quickly in GIMP. And then also increase the contrast enough that the letters were nearly black. I don't think they were. Autumn had drawn me extra characters in some cases so that I could kind of pick between them. I just tried to pick the characters that had a little bit more, I guess, shape that seemed to match the other characters. I do just a little bit of fine-tuning at the end. Then we'll jump into Inkscape with the image of her handwriting. I just embed the image so that I don't destroy the original. Now this step is about 90% of the work. What I'm doing is I'm tracing a vector from a bitmap image. I will then get rid of the original images and just have the vector art. After we have that done, we will ungroup the object, and then we're going to break it apart. Breaking it apart will separate the interiors from all the letters. So later we'll just select any letter that had a hole in it and use the intersection tool to cut it back out. I do each letter one at a time. It makes each shape, each vector shape into its own vector. So when I actually go to make the alphabet, I don't have two letters that are joined together. Those Boolean operations in Inkscape actually save a ton of work. They're definitely worth learning to use if you play with Inkscape at all. We do basically the same exact thing for the numbers, and then I'll start to organize the letters just to put them in order to make it easier on myself when I'm actually adding them into the font. I don't usually worry with like a handwritten font too much about kerning and too much about making sure the letters are perfectly aligned horizontally. It makes it feel a little bit more like a handwritten font, I think, if they're a little bit off. After I set up my typography canvas, I basically just control and drag an arrow and size the font up to the canvas so that it can fit, it'll fit properly. And I want to make it so that the characters don't cut off at the top or bottom, and I can actually adjust the height of the baseline and things later. I did fill in a couple little gaps here and there and things to make it look a little cleaner, but for the most part I left most of the imperfections of the paper and things in place for this font just because I thought it made it look really kind of unique and a little different than something that you would normally just see. From here on in, the process is really pretty much the same as my how to make a font in 9-hour video. I'm just going to take these and import them into FontForge, and then I will, add the enya and some of the characters just by combining the tilde in the end and making sure that there's a library that people can use for Spanish or French. I'm going to do at least one more, maybe 2 more videos about fonts, not next week. I won't do one every week. I don't want my channel to be entirely about fonts. Fonts are actually a very, very small part of what I do. I honestly I only make them when I need them for something and I don't feel like paying a license or somebody asks me to. I would actually love to touch on more web design practices, C++, modeling, texturing, I'd said before, possibly even some of the stranger or less known things like BVH animation, but I don't really know, I don't know that I would really want to get too into some of that. Not because it's not interesting, it's just a very specialized area where it wouldn't really, like, modeling interests more people than BVH animation, I would think. If you have any, like, requests that you really want to see a certain topic talked about, just throw a comment below and I'll take a look at it. Or yeah, I left a message on drawing on Reddit and was asking if anyone would be willing to share some sketches. I can sketch too. I have no problem with that. I can also write the alphabet. I just like to have other people involved. To me, it makes it a little bit more fun. I may just post something into our sketch, or I don't know, I'll find another forum and see if anybody wants to take part in that. I actually cut out and I don't show much more. I'm going to switch to another user's handwriting in a second and show like a couple more tricks that you can use. But the basic process is really just to clean up an image and then convert that image into vector, and then clean up the vectors a little bit so that you have a workable font. I did minimal kerning on this font too. Like I said before, fonts that are handwritten, they don't really look good if you do too much kerning, I find. Maybe it's just a personal preference also, but they tend to, you almost want the characters a little bit separated funny. When I saw Daisy's handwriting, like, I had immediately fallen in love with it. I just knew immediately I was going to pick it. Plus, she even drew me a heart, so I internet heart you too, Daisy. I want to cam around this just a little bit and show you her handwriting, but I'm going to zoom in too, and like I'll show you there's like a little bit of maybe the pen bled or something, or it just needs to be cleaned up a tiny bit. But otherwise, she did a perfect job. There wasn't even very much cleanup at all. Just like, I think it was like 3 or 4 little spots, and then I kind of, made sure to fill in some of the holes. There are websites also where you can turn your handwriting into a font. In my experience, they aren't very good, but I gotta be honest, I haven't used one in a few years now. I like to be able to tweak the font things as I'm building it, so that I can make it a little bit more perfect or a little bit nicer. When I took Daisy's font into Inkscape, I split it so that I could make a variety, like I split it by grayscale layers, so that I was able to like pick out a thin version, a thick version, and that let me pick out the version that I liked the best, and it also gave me a thin version if I wanted to work with in the future or something like that, and also a thick version. When somebody has handwriting as nice as Daisy, I really think 2 things. The first thing that I think is that she's some kind of a mutant with an extra handwriting chromosome. And then the second thing I think is that if she ever wrote a grocery list, I would be too afraid to scratch an item off. I would just wind up buying half of the store. From here on in, what I did is pretty much identical to Autumn's handwriting. Once I get it into FontForge, I do go and add the special characters. Like I said, I'm not going to get into super detail. I just wanted to show you like the process and some of the ins and outs of how it works. About half of my work is done in Inkscape and half of it's done in FontForge, I would say. The whole process takes several hours. I don't really know exactly how many. I was kind of like up and down throughout a few days over the 2 fonts. I would say that overall it took less than 9 hours each, though, maybe like 7 or 6. On this one too, I didn't do a lot of kerning on either of these. Handwritten fonts, like I said, I prefer not to. I think doing less is more. I do use like the auto width, and then I did kern like the T and a few characters, but not really many, just to make it look a little nicer. I would still have to play around with this font for a couple of days, like setting it like in code blocks or something, really just so that I could see how the characters kern. Another good thing to do is just to apply the good old-fashioned Lorem Ipsum to it and see where it falls. Like I was saying before, I mean, my preferred method of making fonts is, to make the font itself and do some kerning, but I don't usually like to do too much. And then as I use it, I'll usually just see, okay, there's a letter there that needs to be moved in. Wherever these two letters appear, they look a little bit funny. And just by using it for a few days, I mean, you really go from something that's not quite usable to something that is works well in almost any situation. You'll notice in a second, I was kind of playing around with the kerning a little bit. There's several ways you can do kerning. One thing is to kern by classes, usually like the T, the C, the O. They're different than the kerning between an A and a V. So if you know some of the classes, that's kind of important. But like I said, by playing around in it, you'll see where those classes are anyway, and eventually just get to know them by heart. I was actually a little bit late on this video, or later than my last two. Usually I'm going to try to release them on a Monday or a Tuesday. Bear in mind that not only am I making the video, I'm doing all the editing and trying to piece it together into something that actually makes a little bit of sense. Every week my plan is to have something that shows you a different tool or a different way to use a tool. I'm going to do a lot with Inkscape, a lot with Blender, some with my paint. GIMP, of course, I'll use quite a bit. For my IDE, I use code blocks with MinGW for C++. I also use Python and some Lua. I'm kind of new to Lua, but it uses IM, IUP, and CD easily, which are three other packages by TechGraph. I may also touch on Hydrogen, MuseScore, Audacity. With that said, please feel free to subscribe, like this video if you found it useful, and I will make another one next week.